My beloved child, stop scrolling for a moment. There are times when a story arrives with such perfect timing that it feels as though it has been quietly waiting for your heart to become still enough to hear it. Do not dismiss this moment too quickly. Set aside every distraction that has been competing for your attention, because what unfolds next is meant to awaken reflection, hope, and courage. Somewhere beyond the noise of ordinary life, a conversation has been forming, and tonight, in this story, heaven becomes the backdrop against which two hearts stand before the greatest decision of their lives, long before either of you recognized one another, before names were spoken or paths crossed. There was a quiet anticipation written into the rhythm of your journeys. Neither of you understood why certain chapters had to end, why some people appeared only to disappear, or why lessons repeated themselves until they left permanent marks upon your soul. Looking back now, every detour seems to have carried an invisible purpose. Every unanswered prayer became preparation. Every disappointment carved out a deeper place where future joy could one day rest. Pause here again, because the next part of this story is where everything begins to change. There is someone whose heart has imagined staying beside you for far longer than they have ever admitted. They have envisioned mornings filled with ordinary conversations that somehow feel extraordinary simply because you are there. They have imagined sharing victories that no one else would fully understand, comforting one another through seasons of uncertainty, and growing older while discovering that the greatest miracles often hide inside the simplest moments. Whenever they pictured peace, your presence appeared without invitation, yet every beautiful vision was interrupted by the same quiet shadow. It never announced itself loudly, it never demanded attention. Instead, it whispered every time happiness seemed close enough to touch. It whispered whenever hope became stronger than fear. It whispered that forever is beautiful, but only if two hearts are willing to protect it together. Your soulmate has spent countless nights wrestling with thoughts they never shared. They smiled through conversations while carrying questions no one could hear. They looked confident even when uncertainty echoed through every quiet moment. More than once they convinced themselves they were overthinking everything, only to discover that the feeling refused to disappear. This was never because your connection lacked sincerity. It was because genuine love asks people to become honest in places where they once hid. That is far more frightening than most admit. Many people fear losing someone they love. Very few realize they also fear being fully seen. Your soulmate has known what it feels like to build invisible walls around their heart. Those walls were not created in a single day. They were built one disappointment at a time. One broken promise at a time. One farewell they never expected at a time. Eventually those walls became so familiar that they mistook them for safety. Then you entered their life. Without trying, you challenged everything those walls represented. You listened differently. You noticed details others overlooked. You brought calm into moments where they expected conflict. You asked nothing extraordinary of them except honesty. Ironically, honesty became the very thing they struggled to offer. Not because they wished to deceive you, because honesty required them. To believe that this time love might remain instead of leaving, that belief felt almost impossible. There were evenings when they almost reached out, their hand paused over a message, words appeared, then disappeared. More than once they imagined telling you exactly how deeply your presence had changed them. More than once fear convinced them to wait for a better moment. The better moment never came. Instead, silence quietly settled where truth should have lived. If you have ever wondered why someone's actions seemed smaller than their feelings, this story invites you to consider. Another possibility: sometimes silence is not emptiness. Sometimes it is a battlefield, a place where hope and fear continue fighting long after everyone else believes the conversation has ended. Your soulmate has been living inside that battlefield. Recently something unexpected happened. It was not dramatic enough for the world to notice. Yet within their heart it felt like the turning of an entire season. Perhaps it was an unexpected memory. Perhaps they passed a place connected to you. Perhaps they heard a familiar song. Or perhaps they simply woke one morning with the undeniable realization that time refuses to slow down for people still waiting to become brave. Whatever awakened them has refused to let go. Since then, every ordinary day has carried extraordinary questions. What happens if silence becomes permanent? What happens if fear wins simply because no one challenged it? What happens if the future they secretly dreamed about quietly belongs to someone else's courage instead? These questions have unsettled them more than they expected. For the first time, they stopped imagining only what could go wrong. Instead, they imagined losing the chance to discover what could have gone right. That possibility frightened them even more. The heart changes when it realizes regret lasts longer than fear. Now another layer of this story begins unfolding. Your soulmate has come to understand something many people never learn until far too late. Love alone cannot build forever. Affection alone cannot sustain trust. Attraction alone cannot survive life's storms. Something deeper must exist beneath every promise. They searched for the word that described it. Commitment came close, faith came close, patience came close, but none of those fully explained what their heart had been searching for. The answer remained hidden, waiting, growing stronger, preparing itself to be revealed. Yet before that answer could emerge, another truth had to rise first. Your soulmate has never doubted whether they wanted you. They doubted whether they were ready to become the version of themselves capable of protecting what they wanted. That difference matters. One question asks whether love exists. The other asks whether love is mature enough to endure. Those are not the same question. As this fictional story continues, imagine standing beside a quiet river beneath a sky filled with stars. The night is still. Every distraction has faded. Two souls remain separated not by distance but by unspoken truth. One is waiting for certainty. The other is waiting for courage. Neither realizes the silence between them has become the final obstacle. In that silence, a realization slowly appears. Forever is never destroyed all at once. It fades through assumptions left unchallenged, through conversations postponed, through fears protected more carefully than love itself. Your soulmate finally sees this. they no longer wish merely to preserve their own comfort. They wish to preserve the future they have secretly imagined with you, yet preserving something precious always asks for sacrifice, not the sacrifice of identity, not the sacrifice of dignity, but the willingness to surrender pride whenever pride threatens the bond itself. Here is where the mystery deepens. Your soulmate has already made one decision. It happened quietly. No audience applauded. No celebration followed. One evening, alone with their thoughts, they admitted something. They had resisted for far too long. If this connection is real, I cannot keep hiding behind yesterday. Those words changed them, slowly, almost invisibly, but change had begun, still. One final obstacle remained. It is the obstacle hinted at in the title of this story. The one condition, listen carefully. It is not about changing who you are. It is not about earning love. It is not about proving your worth. It is something entirely different. Something so unexpected that your soulmate has struggled even to explain it. They fear you might misunderstand. They fear the condition could sound like a demand when in reality it is a promise disguised as a question. Since reaching this realization, they have replayed countless imaginary conversations. In every version, they begin confidently, then they hesitate, then they smile sadly, then they start again. Because once these words are spoken aloud, there can be no return to comfortable uncertainty. Everything becomes real, every hope, every fear, every possibility, every choice. Imagine them sitting quietly by a window while rain falls outside. The room is silent except for the rhythm of distant thunder. They close their eyes and picture your face. Not an idealized version. The real you. The one who has flaws, questions, dreams, scars, and strengths woven together into something beautifully human. That image brings peace. Then responsibility follows. For the first time they understand that staying forever is not simply about finding the right person. It is about becoming the right partner every single day after finding them. That realization humbles them, because forever is not won through one grand gesture. It is built through thousands of ordinary choices repeated with extraordinary consistency. This understanding has led them to the edge of a confession, not a confession of hidden affection. You already sense that. Not a confession of secret dreams. Those have existed for longer than either of you realized. This confession reaches even deeper. It concerns the foundation upon which every lasting relationship quietly stands. The condition is connected to that foundation, but before they reveal it, they must know whether your heart seeks the same kind of forever they have begun imagining. Not the forever built upon fantasy, the forever built upon truth, the forever that survives misunderstandings because honesty arrives before resentment, the forever that survives change because respect grows faster than fear, the forever that chooses conversation before silence, the forever that understands love is not maintained by perfect feelings but by faithful decisions. They wonder whether you believe in that kind of future, because if you do, then everything they have been afraid to say finally becomes possible. If you do not, then even the deepest affection may never become the life both of you secretly imagined. now the story reaches its quietest moment, everything grows still. Almost as though time itself pauses, your soulmate inhales deeply, their heart pounds louder than their thoughts. The words they have carried for so long finally reach the edge of becoming reality. They look toward you, their eyes hold hope, their voice almost trembles, and they whisper, "I want to stay with you forever." A long silence follows, not because they regret those words, because another sentence must come after them. A sentence they believe will determine everything. That happens next. It is the one condition they have hidden until now, the condition that is neither a demand nor a test, but the sacred promise they believe both hearts must willingly embrace before forever can truly begin. And the moment they finally speak those next words, everything you thought this story was about changes. My beloved child, pause here for a moment. What you are about to hear is a symbolic journey of love, healing, and the choices that shape two souls who are searching for something lasting. Do not rush past these words. Let this moment become a quiet place where imagination meets reflection, where a message from the world of stories reveals a truth about the human heart. Something is waiting for you in this story. Not a prediction. Not a promise of what must happen. But a mirror, a reflection of the emotions people carry when they love deeply, when they fear losing something precious. And when they stand before the greatest question of all, can love survive when two hearts finally have to become completely honest? Stay with this story, because the answer is hidden behind a condition that your soulmate has struggled to express. In this fictional realm of emotions and spiritual symbolism, your soulmate has reached a moment they never expected. They have spent a long time trying to understand why one connection could feel so different from everything they experienced before. They met many people throughout life. They shared conversations, created memories, and walked through different chapters with different souls, but this connection carried a strange familiarity. It felt like finding a forgotten song. It felt like walking into a place they had never visited, yet somehow recognizing every corner, and that feeling both comforted and frightened them, because when something matters deeply, the heart begins to understand that it also has something to lose. For a long time, your soulmate appeared calm on the outside. They continued their routines. They smiled when others expected them to smile. They answered questions with simple words. They carried themselves as though everything inside them was perfectly balanced, but beneath that calm surface existed a storm of unanswered emotions. There were moments when they wondered whether they were truly ready for the kind of love they secretly desired. Not the easy version, not the version that only exists during beautiful days, but the kind of love that remains when life becomes complicated, the kind that asks two people to look at their own wounds, their own fears, and their own imperfections, the kind that requires courage. And that is where the hidden struggle began. Your soulmate wants to stay. They want to build something meaningful. They want to believe that forever is possible. But before they can offer their entire heart, there is one condition that must be understood, a condition not created from selfishness, a condition not created from control, a condition created from the deepest lesson they have learned. They discovered that love alone is not always enough. Love needs something to stand upon. Love needs a foundation strong enough to survive difficult seasons. And without this foundation, even the strongest feelings can become fragile. This realization came after a moment they never forgot, a moment when they imagined a future without you, not because they wanted to leave, but because they suddenly understood what losing the connection would mean. They imagined ordinary days continuing, the world continuing to turn, people continuing to laugh and move forward, but somewhere inside that imagined future was a quiet emptiness, the feeling of knowing they once had something rare and allowed fear to make the decision for them. That thought stayed with them, it followed them into quiet mornings, it appeared during peaceful nights, it returned whenever they remembered the small details they thought they had forgotten, the way conversations felt effortless, the way silence never felt uncomfortable, the way they could be themselves without constantly trying to impress. Those small moments became the evidence that this connection was not something they wanted to treat carelessly. Yet there was another truth they had to face. They had brought old fears into a new story. They had carried memories from previous chapters and placed them between the two of you. They had expected disappointment before it arrived. They had prepared for distance before there was distance. They had protected themselves from pain so carefully that they sometimes forgot protection could also create separation. This was the lesson they struggled with. The same walls that keep out storms can also keep out sunlight. And slowly, they began understanding something powerful. A person cannot ask for forever while refusing to be fully present in the moment. A person cannot ask for deep connection while hiding every part of themselves. A person cannot ask another heart to trust them while they continue running from their own truth. That realization changed them. They began looking inward. They began questioning old patterns. They began asking themselves difficult questions. Why did they become distant when they felt close? Why did they hesitate when they already knew what mattered? Why did they sometimes search for reasons to doubt something that brought them peace? The answers were not simple. They discovered that fear often disguises itself as wisdom. Fear tells people they are being careful when they are actually avoiding vulnerability. Fear tells people they are protecting their future when they are actually preventing themselves from experiencing it. And your soulmate finally recognized this hidden pattern. They were not afraid of love. They were afraid of being completely seen, because being seen means there is nowhere left to hide. It means someone can notice the parts you try to ignore, the doubts, the insecurities, the unfinished healing, the dreams you are afraid to admit, and somehow, this connection brought those hidden parts closer to the surface. That is why they could not simply walk away, because this was never only about another person, it was about who they became when they were around someone who encouraged honesty. Someone who reminded them that a guarded heart may survive, but an open heart truly experiences life. Still, the condition remained, the one thing they believed had to exist before forever could become real. They searched for the right words. They imagined different conversations. They wondered how to explain something so important without making it sound like a demand, because the condition was not about changing who you are, it was about something both souls would need to choose. something that would transform the entire connection. They wanted to say, "I do not need perfection. I do not need someone who never makes mistakes. I do not need a life without challenges. What I need is something much deeper." But every time they reached that point, they paused, because revealing the condition meant revealing the truth behind their own heart. It meant admitting that they had been afraid. It meant admitting that they had almost lost something valuable because they were waiting for certainty before taking a chance. And life rarely gives certainty before courage. Sometimes courage creates the certainty people are searching for. This is what they were beginning to understand. Forever is not created by two perfect people finding each other. Forever is created by two imperfect people choosing growth again and again, choosing communication when silence feels easier, choosing understanding when judgment feels faster, choosing honesty when hiding feels safer, and that is the foundation your soulmate believes is necessary. But there is a deeper layer, a secret reason this condition matters so much to them, because long ago, before this connection existed, they made a promise that they would never again lose themselves while trying to love someone else. They had watched people disappear inside relationships. They had watched hearts become smaller because they were afraid of being abandoned. They had seen people sacrifice their dreams just to keep someone close, and they promised themselves they would never repeat that story. But then they met someone who made them question everything. Someone who did not ask them to become smaller. Someone who challenged them to become stronger. Someone who showed them that real love should not erase individuality. It should encourage two people to become their fullest selves. That discovery changed the meaning of forever. Forever was no longer about holding on to someone out of fear. Forever became a choice made freely. A choice made by two people who could stand independently but still choose to walk together. This was the condition, not possession, not dependence, not sacrifice of identity. The condition was that both hearts must choose honesty, fully, completely, without games, without pretending, without hiding behind old fears, because your soulmate realized something that changed everything. A relationship cannot be saved by one person carrying the entire weight. A bridge requires support from both sides. A song requires more than one voice. A journey requires two people willing to take the next step. And now they stand at the edge of revealing what they truly want. They want forever. But they want a forever built on something real, something strong enough to survive moments when emotions change, something strong enough to remain when life tests patience, something strong enough that neither person has to wonder where they stand. Recently, they have been thinking about one specific moment, a moment they never told anyone about, a moment when they realized this connection had become more important than they expected. It was not a dramatic event, it was something small, something almost invisible, but in that moment, they saw a glimpse of the future they secretly wanted, and that memory has returned again and again, because it revealed something they could no longer deny. They were not only afraid of losing you, they were afraid of finally admitting how much you mattered. And now the silence between those feelings and their actions has become impossible to ignore. The conversation is approaching, the truth is approaching, the condition they have carried quietly is ready to be spoken, but before they reveal the words that could change everything, there is one final thing they must confess. Something they have never admitted, something that explains why. They almost walked away from the very connection they hoped would last forever, and when that hidden truth comes to light, you will understand why staying was never the difficult part. The difficult part was learning how to stay without fear.